Before you close your eyes tonight, let us trade the glow of notifications for gentler light's candle flame on wood, moonlight on stone, sunrise on a field that has waited all winter. Welcome to a slow journey through time, a quiet walk across a medieval village at dawn, a measured step into the whispering halls of an imperial court, a respectful pause in a scarlet Maya chamber, and a final visit to a cobalt blue studio where art learned to speak the language of courage. If you enjoy winding down with thoughtful history, feel free to tap like and subscribe. It helps more people find a peaceful corner to listen. And if you would like, share in the comments where you are tuning in from, and what time it is there. It is always a small wonder to see this little circle stretch around the world. Here's how we will travel. First, we will wake in the Middle Ages, where a day begins not with alarms but with the bell and the hearth. With steady hands and careful plans that turn scarcity into enough. Then we will pass to the north, where a young outsider named Sophie learns new words, new customs. And the timing of wise silence before the world remembers her as Catherine the Great. From there, we will move softly through the rainforest, into a stone room touched with red. To meet an unnamed presence whose role and legacy were written not in letters but in ritual and space. Finally, we will step into a sunlit room in Mexico, where Frida Kahlo turns difficulty into symbols, and color into a way to keep going. This won't be a rush of dates and headlines. Think of it as a guided evening walk, unhurried, mindful, and kind. We will keep the tone gentle, the details clear, and the pacing steady enough to rest. But interesting enough to follow awake. If anything feels heavy, we will handle it with care and move on with balance. So, make yourself comfortable. Dim the lights. Let the day set behind you like a quiet shore. Take a slow breath in. And out. Our first stop is a small house of rough boards and careful habits. Outside, the fields are dark. Inside, someone leans toward a sleeping fire with a hook and a handful of straw. A bell will ring soon. When it does, a new day in the year 1325 begins. Imagine a morning without a phone alarm. Without the warm scent of coffee, and without hot water streaming over your shoulders. Instead, you wake in a one-room wooden house where the first light slips through thin gaps in the walls, casting soft beams on a packed earth floor. The hearth has cooled since last night. A faint trace of smoke lingers on the rafters. This small space is the family's entire world. Rough plank beds topped with straw. A few chairs, a plain table, a simple cupboard, a wooden tub for grain, and tools hanging from pegs. Everything has a purpose. If it does not warm you, it cooks for you. Stores food, or helps repair something else. The day usually begins with coaxing the fire back to life. Embers are gathered with an iron hook, then covered with twigs and straw until the flames flicker again. A pot swings from a wooden bar above the coals. Inside is the thick porridge left from the night before. A pinch of salt, a handful of wild greens from the previous afternoon, a few carefully split sticks of firewood, each is measured with care. In a world of scarcity, thrift is second nature. Every stick, every spoon of salt, every bowl of grain is counted. Life's rhythm is tied to the land and the seasons. Spring sows hope, summer demands endurance. Autumn gathers the rewards, and winter asks for patience and protection. The sky is red like a calendar, the color of the cloud suggests rain, the direction of the wind hints at cold. And the sparkle of frost warns of an early chill. Before any decision, people consult the village's living memory, hard-won experience passed down through stories and habits. Children learn not from blackboards but from watching the adults. How to bundle firewood tightly, how to hang tools where they stay dry, how to spread straw so it cushions the back and avoids dampness. Clothing is mostly wool and linen. Wool keeps in warmth during the cold months. Linen is cooler when the weather turns mild. Garments are mended again and again. Neat stitches reflect skilled hands and patient hearts. Leather shoes are heavy and durable. In the rain, mud clings to the soles, slowing every step across the fields. In the corner, a loom stands against the wall. The spools of yarn are the product of hours of spinning and steady conversation across generations. Everything favors usefulness, warm, sturdy, practical, and affordable. Community is the beating heart of survival. No one makes it alone. The seasons force people to rely on each other. When one household raises a wall, others come to help. When another harvests late, neighbors lend hands. These exchanges are more than labor, they are trust, the most precious social currency. Personal honor is guarded by keeping promises, returning borrowed seed on time, and stepping forward when a neighbor is in trouble. In a world full of uncertainty, trust is the shield that lets people sleep more peacefully through long nights. Faith provides a framework for the spirit. The church records life's milestones, births, marriages, memorials, and also shapes each day with morning, noon, and evening bells. The calendar of holy days and fasts gives the village a shared rhythm, times to celebrate, times to slow down, times to remember and give thanks. Weekly messages from the pulpit are more than worship. They are a kind of community newsletter, stories of kindness, reminders to be fair, calls to help those in need. In hard seasons, faith and shared ritual encourage people to join hands and stand in a circle of mutual care. Winter is a test. When wind slips through the wall gaps, dry wood is scarce, and fresh food is limited, families rely on stores, dried grain, smoked meat, salted roots, and a gentle, low-strength brew to warm the body. Housekeeping, airing blankets, drying clothes. Clearing old straw requires persistence because the weather rarely cooperates. Summer is the opposite, blazing sun, heavy work, yet the harvest cannot wait. Between these extremes, cold that bites, and heat that exhausts, people learn to endure and to improvise. Even in this picture of hardship, there is joy. Joy arrives with the scent of new straw, a spell of fresh wind, a pinch of salt used wisely in the pot. A bright fire on a festival night, a small cake shared with children. Smiles appear when a day's responsibilities are done. Gratitude is spoken when a bundle of wood, a bucket of water, or a helpful hand arrives at the right moment. Stories told around the hearth connect generations across time. From a modern perspective, medieval life may seem overwhelmingly limited. But if we pause, we notice traits worth learning. The ability to build order with minimal resources. The strength of community when everyone carries a share. Quiet, steady discipline. And gratitude for small things. These qualities, persistence, mutual help, frugality, appreciation, are life skills that kept hope alive somewhere between cold nights and muddy roads. Season by season, people moved forward. If the food culture of the time had a single theme, it would be seasonal. Daily meals revolve around grains, legumes, and root vegetables. The pot of pottage on the fire is the heart of the table, grains simmered with water. Wild greens, and a few roots. Occasionally enriched with a bit of fat or preserved meat for flavor. Bread is common where barley or rye can be grown. Coarsely milled flour that keeps a lot of bran helps sustain energy after long workdays. Eggs, milk, and butter appear depending on region and season. In river and lake areas, fish is more available than fresh meat. Costly spices, pepper, cinnamon, cloves rarely enter a peasant kitchen. Even salt, which seems ordinary to us, can be precious. Food preservation is an art of survival. Times of plenty must prepare for lean months, drying to fight moisture, salting to extend shelf life, smoking for aroma and durability, and fermenting for safe, long-keeping foods. Above the hearth, bundles of herbs hang to scent the air and flavor the pot. The storage room is the family's bank, every jar of pickled vegetables, every slab of smoked meat, every sack of grain is a deposit for the future. Skilled hands turn humble ingredients into valuable reserves, avoiding waste. Water is a major concern. Surface water can be unsafe. Villages with deep, clear wells enjoy a real health advantage. In many areas, low-strength fermented drinks are used as a safer, energy-giving option than untreated water. There is no need for high alcohol content, just enough to reduce harmful microbes and provide calories for labor. Tea and coffee are not yet widespread. Fresh milk exists but spoils quickly without careful handling. The guiding principle is simple. Eat with the seasons, drink from the safest source, and favor safety and thrift. Nutrition follows a yearly cycle. In warm months, fresh produce is abundant and bodies feel lighter. In cold months, green vegetables are scarce, meals lean toward starches and preserved foods. And energy can dip. Traditional knowledge helps fill gaps, fragrant herbs to uplift a simple pot, hardy roots to sustain strength, and broths to comfort someone recovering. Monasteries often keep gardens of medicinal plants and maintain modest infirmaries, places where a person can be washed, given warm drinks, and allowed to rest. Places where knowledge about herbs, cleanliness, and food handling is recorded and shared. While science of the time is limited, the intent to help and the drive to organize knowledge lay foundations for future improvement. Health is shaped more by living conditions than we might think. Damp houses and cooking smoke can irritate the lungs. Strenuous work strains the back and joints. Long cold seasons wear down stamina. Personal and household hygiene: washing hands before meals, boiling water when possible, drying bedding in the sun are maintained where they can be, even if not always convenient. Thick clothing and damp weather make laundry laborious. People learn to dry garments near the hearth and use rising warm air to prevent mildew. Each small technique is a discovery that eases daily life. Oral health is a shared challenge. Diets heavy in coarse grains and limited access to specialized care mean teeth wear down over time. Without dwelling on details, we can say this: those with access to sweets risk more cavities. Those without often experience abrasion from coarse bread and the grit of stone-milled flour. Instead of emphasizing the negative, notice how people adapt, using fibrous twigs to rub the teeth, rinsing with clean water, eating in moderation, and treating occasional sweetness as a rare treat. For childbirth and infant care, a network of experienced midwives is essential. They serve as family health guides across generations, advising on nutrition, assisting during birth, and checking on mother and child afterward. The community commonly joins in. Someone cooks, someone watches the older children, someone warms water. In constrained settings, commitment and cooperation become as important as any remedy. Perhaps the most admirable trait is adaptability. People know their land intimately, remember when fruit ripens, when fish are plentiful, and the best times to plant, harvest, and dry. They transform simple ingredients into balanced meals, a sprig of herbs to revive a pot of pottage, marrow bones simmered into a nourishing broth, and modest trades at the market to bring home something special for a holiday. Though not abundant, meals can remain steady and adequate, helping families weather difficult months. From a modern vantage point, the limited variety may inspire sympathy. But slowing down reveals practical wisdom. Eating with the seasons keeps food fresh and affordable. Smart storage strengthens a household against uncertainty. Respect for ingredients means using everything and turning leftovers into something new. And steady routine helps bodies adapt to climate and workload. When we place food within the wider frame, environment, community, and knowledge passed down, we see cuisine not merely as fuel but as a culture of patience, moderation, and gratitude. If there were a clock measuring time in an old village, it would be the sun, the wind, and the bell. The workday begins when dawn brushes the furrows with light and ends when the last coal settles beneath a layer of ash. There are no wall calendars and no reminder apps. The calendar is the soil itself, and every task revolves around keeping the soil healthy. In spring, people head to the fields early to clear weeds, loosen earth, and spread well-rotted manure saved from the winter. A wooden plow, pulled by oxen, moves slowly but surely, cutting straight lines like the first sentences of a new book. Seed is precious. The sack is kept dry and safe. And only experienced hands trusted with the season's timing are allowed to sow. A well-timed rain feels like a blessing. A hailstorm in mid-season can bring the whole village together to plan how to keep food on the table. Summer belongs to endurance. Weeding, mounding soil, shoring up dikes, and replanting weak seedlings repeat in a steady rhythm that demands attention and patience. Villagers learn to read subtle signs. Wilting leaves hint at water stress, darker soil foretells rain, the shifting path of an ant trail can signal weather change. Without modern instruments, they still read the countryside fluently. On the hottest days, a straw hat, a damp cloth, and a clay flask of cool water form a simple rescue kit. A brief midday rest under a tree brings small lessons traded across generations, where the soil is richest. Which plot benefits from ash, how to time the next irrigation. Autumn belongs to the sickle. Cutting, bundling, carrying, drying, threshing, and winnowing, each action distills techniques honed over generations. A bright, breezy drying yard is the expressway of ripening grain. After drying, bundles are threshed by hand, then winnowed to separate straw and husk. Finally, clean, golden grain is stored off the ground in a well-ventilated loft to resist moisture. Running your hands through new grain dry, crisp, and fragrant with sun is a quiet celebration of months of endurance. Winter arrives, and while the fields sleep, hands never truly rest. Tools are repaired, blades sharpened, handles carved. Ropes are braided, baskets woven, spokes fitted. The smith's bellows glow, heating iron into new plowshares and shoeing wooden cartwheels with metal rings. For a season, the village becomes a workshop, hammers ring, saws sing, and scissors click. Barter livens up, a hand-woven basket for a pinch of salt. A good knife for several bundles of dry straw. The market day weekly or monthly offers rare glimpses of luxuries like thin sewing needles, a bright swatch of cloth, or a pinch of unfamiliar spice. Beneath the surface, work is also a science of organization. With only so many hours in a day, tasks must nest inside each other, simmer stock while the cooking fire is already lit. Dry kindling under the eaves while watching a toddler. Mend clothing during the wait for water to boil. This is the art of synchronizing in a world of limited means, where each spare minute is recycled into value. Water and fuel are the village's lifelines. Where there is a deep, clean well, sickness decreases. Where forest stands are cared for selective cutting, proper drying. Sheltering roots the winter burns warmer. Good managers stack firewood by size, compost with the right ratios of straw, manure, and ash, and return nutrients to the fields in the spring. These small tricks may sound minor, but they are keys to food security. There is no insurance policy or emergency fund in the modern sense, so community fills that role. If a family faces trouble, roof damage, illness, or a poor harvest, the village organizes a work day, contributes grain, and helps them get back on their feet. In return, when another household falls behind on harvest or needs to build a pen, help arrives from those who were once helped. Reputation functions as currency: say what you will do what you said, repay on time, and pitch in when asked. A respected reputation opens accounts in the hearts of neighbors. In the midst of labor, soft skills grow naturally, coordinating hand in hand, sensing another's pace, guiding small teams, sharing tools with minimal friction. The village head or the most experienced farmer does not need to shout. They stand where the view is clear, gesture with a hand, offer a nod. A successful harvest often depends less on lone heroics and more on how well the group moves as one. Risks are always near: prolonged rain, pests, or animal disease. Villagers counter these with a toolkit for risk management, diversifying crops, interplanting to spread risk. Saving seed of different varieties, splitting storage not all in one place. And staggering sowing dates. This is the wisdom of people with few coins but deep experience, wisdom that still applies today. Despite the hard work, there is modest joy. Work songs while hoisting beams, field calls during transplanting, small games during breaks, ring toss with twine, simple hand games. Shared jokes. Evenings bring ember glow and stories of last season, with children listening and elders adding detail. Knowledge is not written in ledgers. It is written into hands and feet, into the way a person steps into a field or glances at the sky for wind. Compared to today, this rhythm can make us sigh. Yet it gifts a set of principles that remain sharp. Persistence, do the small things faithfully. Small steps compound. Collaboration, one swift person can't beat a coordinated crew. Respect for resources, use less. Use wisely, use at the right time. Risk planning, never pin all hope on one plot, one storehouse, one sunny day. By these principles, a village without wealth can still be well provisioned in the deeper sense, enough food, enough trust, and enough unity to face lean seasons. This is the rhythm that never rests, not because of pressure, but because everyone knows, if next season is to be better than this one, today's tasks must be done well. On the work map of an old village, women do not merely help. They are the architects of the household. At sunrise, many have already stoked the fire, proofed dough, fed poultry, packed food for the fields, and arranged childcare. When adults are away in the fields, the house still runs thanks to women's hands, washing, mending, spinning, weaving, drying, checking the grain chest, the water jars, salting, air-drying herbs, and fermenting to build reserves. Every movement is a link in the household's micro-supply chain. Women also manage risk. They know when to buy extra salt before damp weather, when to dehydrate roots in strong sun, where to hide a small reserve of seed in case of crop failure, and which neighbor could trade at the right moment. They hold a social map, who raises poultry well, who has spare fat, who needs soft food during a cold season. Exchanges flow to the right person at the right time. A kind word, a shared plate, a small bundle of herbs can be social contracts, stronger than ink. At home, women are living libraries of practical knowledge. They teach children to identify safe wild greens, aromatic leaves for simple remedies, how to dry without mold, how to salt with a steady hand, and how to tend the fire to save fuel. They show how to fold and store with order, wash hands before meals, boil water when needed, and avoid cold drafts. These small habits add up to the household's health. When someone is ill, women coordinate, warm water, light meals, quiet rooms, clean bedding. Supplies are limited, but within those limits, they orchestrate a circle of care that helps recovery. Women are also the household's cultural department. They keep rituals, arranging trays, folding cloths, hanging greenery, singing lullabies, telling stories. The lullaby is a child's first lesson in language and rhythm. Hearthside tales offer first lessons in ethics, respect, sharing, keeping promises. Festivals become stages for craftsmanship, a dish made to exact taste, even stitching, carefully woven garlands. On such days, the house is colored in, and children are welcomed into community through ceremony, learning to take their place in life. For children, childhood is intertwined with learning by hand. At an age when many today are just learning the alphabet, children once gathered kindling, swept yards, held siblings, watered gardens, learned simple basket weaving, and tied secure knots. Play grows from what is at hand, ring toss with twine, stone hopping on dirt paths, hide and seek among shrubs, mud houses by the field edge. There are no factory-made toys, but there is imagination. More importantly, children learn responsibility, take your turn, finish before you play, return to complete what you began. Children's education is mostly observation and repetition. They watch adults split wood safely, carry water without spilling, tend a pot so it won't scorch. They learn to greet politely, yield to elders, stay quiet near someone resting. A church or a local teacher, where present, provides letters and parables. But the largest curriculum comes from the household routine. In this way, women, the organizers of the household, are effectively the homeroom teachers of childhood. A woman standing in the village is not measured only by seals or titles. Many critical decisions pass through her hands. Which seed to save, what dish to serve on a feast day, who watches the storehouse when the family is away, what portion quietly goes to a struggling neighbor. Women negotiate with skill. A bundle of wood for a bowl of fat, an afternoon of labor for a basket of greens. Sometimes a message is enough to activate the mutual aid network. In small conflicts, women often serve as shock absorbers, quieting ego, reminding everyone of shared interests, and suggesting make-good solutions so both sides can meet in the market without tension. As for safety, women and children are a priority for communal safeguards. Unwritten rules do not walk alone on dark paths, nearby homes watch for one another, children stay away from water's edge. Form a soft net of protection. No community is perfect, but collective attention turns a small village into safe enough space for children to grow, women to work, and elders to rest. The household economy often stands on women's shoulders, managing stores, tracking favors and debts, preserving, processing, bargaining at market. Income is not only grain carried home. It is also money saved through good processing and full use of leftovers. A well-timed flour cloth prevents waste. A perfect jar of pickles stretches meals without needing more meat. Long-simmered broth becomes a restorative dish for someone recovering. These details look small, but they are the profit of the household. For children, dreams are not grand but grounded, holding a steady sickle, carrying water without waves, stitching straight, harvesting on time. As they grow, the quick-handed may apprentice. Smithing, carpentry, weaving, basketry, brewing light ale. Apprenticeship improves status, brings income, and widens connections. Masters expect discipline, care, and reliability. In return, learners gain skill and a place in the village network. Challenges always exist: lean seasons, illness, tight stores. It is during these periods that a woman's role shines. She tightens portions wisely, prioritizes the vulnerable, extends food through careful preparation, and calls on relatives and neighbors at the right time. This is not magic. It is the art of managing scarcity. If this chapter needs one line to close, it is this: women and children are not at the margins, they are the center of motion in the household. Women hold visible order stores. Kitchen, schedules and invisible order, reputation, connections, emotions. Children are learners and successors to that order. From here, today's lessons are clear. Honor care work. It is the infrastructure of every other activity. Invest in education through daily life, self-care, self-organization, and situational awareness. Build trust networks so that, in hard times, no one is alone. In a rapidly changing world, these simple practices remain a compass for warm households, resilient communities, and a future with capable hands to carry the work forward. Chapter 5: Religion. A framework for order and a refuge for the spirit. If one sound could begin the day in an old village, it would be the bell. It does not only invite people to worship. It sets the time for lighting the hearth, heading to the fields, drawing water, and helping elders outside to enjoy the sun. In medieval Europe and in many other civilizations, the local religious center functions as a coordination hub, recording births, marriages, and memorials, sharing announcements, and guarding the community's memory. There, people learn shared manners, how to greet others, speak with balance, observe customs in times of sorrow and celebration. These soft rules are the rails that keep the village on track. The liturgical calendar shapes life like a frame: days of fasting and feasting, seasons of restraint and seasons of joy, times of thanksgiving and remembrance. When agricultural schedules are tied to weather, religious time offers a steady rhythm for the mind: moments to celebrate, moments to slow down, moments to reflect. On feast days, the village wears brighter colors: banners, bread, songs, and dances. During fasts, meals are simpler, voices quieter, and music gentler, giving space for reflection. This rhythm is not only faith. It is also a social technology that helps people move through long, demanding seasons without losing heart. Weekly sermons work like a community newsletter. Where literacy is rare, the pulpit is an effective communication channel, moral stories wrapped in parables, reminders to keep one's word. Calls to help households in need, and updates about repairing the chapel roof or a village road. Through these messages, the community learns to coordinate, visit the sick, share with those in difficulty, resolve disputes. Many small conflicts end right in the churchyard, where personal honor stands alongside the village's long-term harmony. Religious institutions are also keepers of letters. Clergy members often learn to read and write before others and become the village's natural archivists, recording baptisms and marriages, copying texts, and maintaining ledgers. Attached to monasteries are herb gardens and simple infirmaries, places where a person can be cleaned, given warm drinks, and allowed to rest. Places where knowledge about herbs, hygiene, and food handling is systematized. While the science of the time has limits, goodwill and the drive to preserve knowledge lay a foundation for improvements to come. In art, religion is a major source of inspiration. Architecture, stained glass, carved wood, wall painting, and sacred music are not mere decoration. They are visual and sonic curricula for a population with limited access to books. Colored glass tells stories of kindness. Choral harmony teaches cooperation. Ritual rhythm cultivates a sense of belonging. Children look up at vaults, listen to choirs, and learn to respect quiet, an underrated skill in a noisy world. Of course, there are limitations. When spiritual authority grows too strong, society may lean toward conservatism and hesitate to adopt changes, sometimes placing pressure on differences. Yet even in stricter times, a view from the ground level reveals the value of religious communities, caring for the vulnerable, connecting distant neighbors, and giving everyone a shared language to explain sadness and hope. For many, meaning can be as essential as bread. A short prayer by a sickbed calms a household. A farewell ritual gives grief a dignified place to rest. Religious centers also serve as go-betweens for citizens and rulers. When official administration sits far away, the local church or its equivalent becomes the junction that relays guidance, gathers feedback, and translates abstract policy into concrete action. A work party to fix a path, a fair distribution of stores, a call for volunteers. During crop failures or storms, faith communities can mobilize quickly. One person cooks, another carries water, another watches children, another distributes supplies. No formal memo is needed. The activation signal travels through networks of trust. Another subtle contribution is a work ethic rooted in fairness. When sermons emphasize honesty, moderation, and keeping promises, these virtues become professional standards. The carpenter delivers on time, the smith hands over a sharp plowshare, the merchant weighs fairly. Not everyone hits the mark, but because honor is tied to public reputation, local goods and services trend toward being trustworthy. In this way, religious life helps reduce transaction costs, a quiet but real boost to the rural economy. Looking back is not about copying the past. It is about learning how to create soft frameworks today, shared stories, connecting rituals, and places to go when the spirit is tired. In modern companies, schools, and neighborhoods, we still need rituals: onboarding, year-end gatherings, community days, quiet spaces, and common narratives so people can stand together when challenges arrive. Bells and hymns once did this. Today, clear values and a culture of care can do the same. Takeaways for today. A healthy community needs a framework. For the spirit not to restrict, but to coordinate. Meaning strengthens endurance. Do not underestimate the power of a shared story. Trust is social capital. Protect it with transparency, reliability, and fair sharing. Keep connecting rituals, even small ones. They ease fatigue and recharge the group. A society with few surveillance tools and few detailed statutes can still remain orderly if it rests on three pillars: personal honor, family standing, and measured deterrence. In a village where everyone knows everyone else, off-track behavior is hard to hide. Reputation becomes a true asset. It lets you borrow seed, ask a neighbor to watch the children, or gather helpers to repair a roof after a storm. Losing reputation raises the cost of daily life, harder to trade. Harder to ask favors, harder to stay within mutual aid networks. Market rules develop early. Standard weights and measures, posted prices where possible, stall agreements, and night watches to safeguard the marketplace. Guilds and craft groups set skill standards, delivery dates, and remedies when work falls short. This kind of self-governance is affordable and effective, replacing what would otherwise require a cumbersome inspection system. In the countryside, land and water disputes field boundaries. Footpaths, access to streams are common. Elders or other respected figures mediate. They judge not only right and wrong, but also the social consequences, if the penalty is too heavy. Will the families still meet peacefully at the market? If the decision seems biased, will others still respect community rules? The goal is to restore order so that tomorrow everyone can dry grain in the same yard and carry water on the same path. Therefore, making amends, compensating for loss, community service, repairing roads, moving supplies, and public apologies, rebuilding standing are often preferred to severe punishments. Night watches and quiet hours are low-cost tools with high returns. In towns, watchmen patrol streets, sound alerts, help with small fires, and keep an eye on merchants' goods. In villages, quiet hours help elders and children rest and reduce risk from unattended flames. When newcomers arrive, gatekeepers or neighbors greet them and guide them to trusted homes, combining hospitality with risk reduction. Daily safety runs on accumulated trust. Small contributions from many people create a safer place for all. Even with these supports, deterrence has a role. Yet in many communities, the priority is education and restoration. For instance, requiring a merchant who shorted a measure to repay generously can be more effective than exclusion that would push them further from community norms. Assigning useful public work helps a person repay a social debt and rebuild a good name. This approach reduces the spiral of mistake isolation, bigger mistake, and instead offers a bridge back. A critical element is teaching honor. From early years, children learn to keep promises, not take what is not theirs, and be discreet when others have valuables. Keeping one's word is not a vague ideal. It is a job requirement. The carpenter delivers the table as promised, the smith returns the agreed plowshare, the vendor fulfills an order on time. Honor is thus linked to competence. Do it well, do it right, do it fully. When honor is tied to one's craft, the motivation to do right becomes natural. Crises, failed harvests, illness, storms test every rule. In these times, communities need transparency. Who is receiving help, when the granary opens, how much each household receives? Transparency does not just block misuse. It feeds trust, the only fuel that carries a village through scarcity, without breaking its internal bonds. Leaders who communicate clearly, accept responsibility when things go wrong, and keep distribution promises can hold a community together. Conversely, abuse of power and unfairness quickly erode trust. Rumors spread, people hold back resources, doors close, and social costs rise. Those who uphold rules must first govern themselves, be fair, calm, and willing to listen. Their strength lies not in harshness but in putting out small sparks before they become fires. Woven together, these threads form a clear community order model. Simple, local rules grounded in reality, weights, hours, boundaries. Proportionate responses that deter while favoring amends and restoration over exclusion. Honor. As social currency that rewards good work with future cooperation. Transparency in hard times to preserve the glue of trust. Early education so norms become second nature. For today's workplaces, classrooms, and neighborhoods, this translates into restorative thinking. When someone errs, ask first, how can we repair, rather than how can we remove. Build transparent systems so conscientious people stay motivated and those who slip have a credible path back. And remember the value of professional honor. Doing things correctly, completely, and with accountability reduces the hidden costs everyone bears. In the end, durable order is not built on fear. It rests on voluntary compliance because people see the rules as fair. When norms are clear, consistent, and humane, following them feels like insurance for oneself. In old villages, this was built from promises, neighbors' eyes, and the evening bell. Today, we add policies, cameras, and software, but the core remains: trust one another, respect one another, and give each mistake a path to become a lesson. Before she became a symbol of Russian statecraft, Catherine was simply Sophie, a young German noble brought to a distant court with a different climate, language, and customs. The first scene of her story is not a throne. It is a frosted window in a northern city. Not cheering crowds, but the quiet murmur of court life: who might be an ally, who deserves distance, who could serve as a bridge to the future. And where the hidden pitfalls lie. Sophie understood that before she could dream big, she had to adapt, but not by erasing herself. She learned Russian, studied protocol, and absorbed the country's history and faith. She learned how to stand in a political space where every word could be noted and every glance could signal more than it seemed. She also learned the timing of silence. When a conversation changes direction, when praise might carry a hidden edge, when rushing to display cleverness only makes others wary. At court, the right pace can matter as much as the right idea. Reading shaped Catherine as much as social skill. She turned to Enlightenment writers as mental maps on law, education, social order, and administration. Yet she did not become a slogan maker. She observed how power actually worked where she lived, what officers hoped for, what nobility feared, what common people expected from a ruler. From there she designed a public image: a learned woman, steady, respectful of local customs without being bound by them. A listener who would not lose her judgment. In a world where networks are worth as much as gemstones, Catherine chose to build trust in small, consistent ways. She remembered the names of diligent attendants, noted capable officers, encouraged careful workers. It was not flashy, but it was steady. Over time, these points of trust became leverage. When a turning point arrived, small anchors combined into a large push. This is the art of placing pieces well before you move, very different from trying to win everything in a single stroke. One of Catherine's early tests involved changing faith traditions and facing assumptions about outsiders. She answered neither with stubbornness nor flattery, but with principled adaptability. She accepted necessary rituals for life and work while protecting a private intellectual space: reading, thinking, writing, sharpening judgment. That is how a person keeps identity while fitting in. People remember Catherine for her long memory, not of trivia, but of context, who had kept a promise during hardship, who owed a favor, who stood at a hinge point for future changes. She did not demand blind loyalty. She created conditions for loyalty: assignments matched to strengths, clear rewards, and consistent accountability so that people could see their own success aligned with the state's success. This is durable leadership, quiet, but deep. Catherine's story is not a fairy tale. It includes careful calculations, shifting alliances, and firm decisions when necessary. What stands out is the value framework she held to: order, education, culture, and law. She believed a strong state is not only measured by borders, but by citizens who can read, institutions that protect, and rules clear enough that talent can be used. The vulnerable can be supported, and those who err have a path to repair. Brought into today's world, her approach suggests practical principles. Adaptation without self-erasure: learn, discard, and choose fit in without losing your voice. Knowledge that becomes action: read to think differently, think to act differently, act with good timing. Relationships as levers, not ropes: build on trust, clarity, and responsibility so your network lifts you instead of tying you down. Public image as a values statement: calm, respectful, attentive, and reliable, soft symbols that invite cooperation. So when we say Catherine rose to power, do not imagine only a dramatic coronation. Look before that moment: years of reading, observing, connecting, self-discipline, and waiting for the right opening. Only when the foundation is thick enough does a turning point become a beginning rather than an end. That is how Sophie the outsider became an architect of an era. One image captures Catherine's reign, a work desk covered with letters, reports, maps, and reform proposals. It is not a prop. It is the surface where ideals meet reality. Catherine valued culture and education and wanted Russia to welcome knowledge from abroad. She also understood that ideals cannot stand if the treasury is shaky, the army disorganized, or loyalties scattered. Throughout her rule she worked with a dual formula: grow culture and learning, standardize administration, and stabilize key alliances, the essentials of keeping the country whole. On the culture and education side, she promoted translation, libraries, schools, and supported the arts. These were not decorative extras. They formed the state's soft infrastructure. When more people can read, paperwork has meaning. When libraries exist, knowledge circulates. When stages, collections, and music flourish, a shared identity has a home. On the governance and law side, she pushed to simplify procedures, delegate appropriately, and standardize rules. A wide empire needs a clear operating system: which province handles what, which official approves which step, who audits finances, who delivers public services. Catherine did not keep things vague. She wrote, revised, and rewrote policies so the machinery would run by process rather than by chance or personality. With better processes, successors can also function. It is an invisible legacy with visible benefits. But the social ground was uneven. Historical structures such as entrenched privileges and rural dependency made sweeping, overnight change unrealistic. Catherine chose incrementalism, select priorities, set a pace, and compromise where necessary so that crucial alliances were not shattered. In administration, impatience can cost everything. By contrast, measured steps let new ideas take root and become normal. Reform also needs grip, a hold on everyday life. Grip comes from clear benefits, good explanations, consistency, and resources to back policies. Education reform is not a speech. It requires trained teachers, printed materials, affordable access, and a multi-year plan. Legal reform is not a proclamation. It requires staff training, better record keeping, and pilot programs before scaling. Catherine understood the cycle of pilot, evaluate, improve, expand before it had a name. In security and borders, she aimed for stable frontiers, sensible deployments, and careful diplomacy. Peace, when possible, is affordable. But a credible deterrent protects gains. Here, realism is not a grim word. It is a compass that keeps ideals from drifting too far from the shoreline of practical constraints. Reforms must be defensible or they will be washed away. Another facet was talent management. Catherine had an eye for people, not just finding capable individuals, but placing them well. Not just giving authority, but tying it to responsibility. Not just noting contributions, but recognizing them publicly to set positive examples. She understood that human motivation has three drivers, meaning the work matters, capability, tools, and mandate match the task, and recognition, effort is seen and valued. When all three are present, organizational performance rises without heavy-handedness. Every reform bumps into political risk. Catherine responded with phasing, smaller stages, limited trials, evaluation, and then wider rollout. This protects dignity for all sides and gives time for evidence to accumulate. When people see results, resistance often fades. Her reform toolkit can be distilled to sow ideals through culture and education to create a shared language. Standardize, simplify, and delegate so the state's operating system runs by process. Advance, deliberately choose battles and timing. Prefer the durable over the dramatic. Be transparent, explain, pilot, and scale a smart policy loop. Manage talent with meaning, capability, and recognition to build long-term momentum. In today's organizations, public, private, or civic, we can apply the same logic: avoid overnight overhauls. Weave processes, people, and culture into a sturdy fabric. Don't just announce. Document, train, pilot, measure, and improve. Don't expect no one to lose. Be transparent and rebalance fairly so the network of interests can reset rather than fracture. Catherine was no saint, and history is never one shade. If there is a closing line for her approach, it is this: she put ideals on the desk and used reality as a ruler to draw the route. Because of that, many changes from her time, though not dazzling in a single night, endured. They became the quiet bricks beneath a floor strong enough for later generations to walk on. Picture yourself in the cool shade of a Maya temple complex. Above, rainforest crowns ancient stone terraces. Below, a narrow passage leads into the base of a low pyramid. When archaeologists opened a sealed wall, centuries of still air stirred. Torchlight swept the chamber and the room seemed to glow. The walls and floor were dusted in cinnabar, a vivid red mineral the Maya associated with transition and renewal. At the center lay a stone sarcophagus. Inside was a woman of high standing known to us today as the Red Queen. That title did not come from a name carved on stone. No name survives. Instead, the tomb speaks through ritual. Around the sarcophagus were jade ornaments, a mosaic face masked the color of forest. Leaves, sealed ceramic vessels, and objects used in ceremony. Without a single sentence, the arrangement conveys a clear message: status, function, and calling. In Palenque, a Maya city renowned for art and architecture, placing a woman in such a sacred precinct, close to the center of royal authority, declares that she was far more than someone's spouse. She was likely a ritual anchor, perhaps a matriarch, priestly figure, or guardian of lineage. Why the red mineral? Across Mesoamerica, red links to life cycles, the sun, and the passage between worlds. Enveloping the tomb in cinnabar symbolically marks the threshold, not an end point, but a crossing. In that logic, the Red Queen does not simply lie at rest. She is transferred to a role within the sacred realm, continuing to matter in the community's spiritual life. What kind of power did she hold, in the Maya worldview? Authority is not only on the throne. Power also resides in the ability to connect human and divine through ceremony, in astronomical knowledge that sets farming calendars, and in bloodlines that legitimize a dynasty. A royal woman might not lead armies, yet she could lead rites, preside over state occasions, and sponsor heirs. When a woman's burial stands near the ceremonial core or adjacent to a king's monument, it signals both sacred status and dynastic importance. There is also the possibility of intentional anonymity. In a culture where ritual practice is a primary vessel of memory, a personal name is not the only key. Masks, room layout, grave goods, and color become codes. The Maya did not remember only with text. They remembered with space. Entering the red chamber would tell future generations how to address and honor this figure. In that sense, the Red Queen is preserved not by inscription, but by role, a kind of identity that lives in communal practice. Look closely, and the jade mask is not mere decoration. It is a statement of identity. In Mesoamerican thought, green-blue jade evokes vitality, breath, and maize, the essential crop. Placing such a mask on the face of the departed restores a symbolic breath of green, affirming continued presence in the sacred world. The sealed vessels likely once held offerings, food, drink, or incense to accompany the spirit on its journey. The chamber itself is a concentrated sanctuary, every detail forms a sacred language. The Red Queen's story opens a wider perspective on Maya architecture and planning. Temples were not arranged at random. Axes, orientations, and heights aligned with celestial cycles and ceremonial routes. A major interment placed next to a central shrine says, "This person continues to protect the city, serving as a link between royal lineage and cosmic order." In other words, the Red Queen is placed in the city's circuit. From now on, each great rite symbolically passes by her. You might ask, why did history forget women's names? In many cases, history did not forget. Rather, our reading methods have been too narrow. If we look only for inscriptions and regnal lists, We miss rituals, spatial clues, and objects, the very places where women are most visible. The Red Queen shows how soft power, ceremony, lineage, cultural authority can shape a city's fate even without a written voice. This does not diminish kings. It makes the picture richer and truer. Lessons for today. First, do not equate anonymous with insignificant. Many people who build our families and communities leave no official titles. Yet their handprints are everywhere, in household rituals, in commemorations, and in stories that last. Second, learn to read space and objects, a family altar, a carefully kept wedding garment, a ceremonial jar used at housewarmings. These are texts without letters. Third, when teaching children history, do not stop at who ruled when. Invite them to decode a room, a pathway, a ritual. History becomes lively and fair to those who stood behind the scenes. When we close our imagined tomb door, we may still not know the Red Queen's birth name. But we know her role, keeper of continuity, bridge, and crimson emblem reminding the city where it comes from and where it aims to go. Perhaps that is enough for a person to endure. From the Red Queen's chamber, a broader question emerges: how many women sustained social order while written history skimmed past them? Our instinct when doing history is often to look for text dates, names, decrees, campaigns. Yet the order of daily life, from planting calendars and ceremonial meals to storehouses, childrearing, and care, often rests in uncredited hands, frequently women's hands. In recent decades, archaeology, anthropology, and history have widened their lens. Instead of reading only written lines, researchers read space, where the hearth sits, what fuel is used, how movement flows through the house, and who benefits from that layout. They read objects, where looms are found, what burn marks say about cooking methods, how storage jars were sealed. They read ritual, which dishes appear on feast days, who stands at the center, who quietly coordinates. When the method changes, the conclusions change, and women come into focus so clearly that it is hard not to see them. In an old dwelling, women's invisible fingerprints are everywhere. Drying racks, hanging baskets, the placement of salt jars, an entry to the kitchen wide enough for two people to pass without bumping, a high shelf out of reach of small children. Each small choice is a risk decision against dampness, fire, contamination, or food loss. At the market, every day exchanges a bundle of fuel for a bowl of fat, a half day of labor for a basket of greens. Often pass through women's soft negotiation. They keep mental ledgers: which home has surplus wood, who just made a fresh batch of pickles, who has someone convalescing who needs tender food. This is logistics before the word existed. Within community ritual, women often serve as unspoken directors: who prepares which dish, what is served first, which tray is reserved for elders, what leftovers are stored, and how cleanup will be handled. They stack meanings. A dish that honors ancestors, a gesture that marks the season, a table layout that signals respect. When history asks only who ruled, we miss an equally important question. Who preserved? Preservation is what lets any authority endure. How can we restore women's place without forcing interpretations? Through careful method. Read the sediment of space: hearth, store, drying areas, pathways, placements for fragile goods. Ask why here. Who benefits? What risks are reduced? Read the life cycle of objects: making, using, repairing, reusing, passing down. Cookware, weaving tools, jars, baskets are often soft archives of women's work. Read ritual and foodways: which dishes have names, which are understood without saying. Who carves portions, who yields portions? Rituals are constitutions enacted. Read exchange networks. Who trades what with whom, and on what cycle? This is the microeconomy map many women run. Apply these reading tools, and women's presence appears without embellishment. There is no need to romanticize. We simply see them at the center, balancing scarcity and need, tradition and adaptation. They may not win in a military sense, but they make communities survive a quiet, decisive kind of victory. This approach is not only for researchers. In any family today, we can do living history in simple ways. Interview elders about household rituals, which dish for which day, how the table is arranged, why certain items must not be moved. Photograph and annotate everyday objects, a hand-woven basket, a well-used pot, an embroidered cloth, who made it, when, and for what moments. Map the kitchen, draw a simple plan, mark where things sit and why. And note safety tips built into the layout. Record recipes as memory documents, not only grams and minutes, but sensory cues need until the dough feels like it is breathing, stop when the aroma says it is done. As we preserve small things, a portrait appears, a grandmother with no formal title who served as the home's food safety steward. A mother without rank who acted as the chief engineer of daily order. A quiet aunt who becomes master of ceremony whenever the family gathers. We realize that history often unfolds at the stovetop as much as in grand halls. This perspective cultivates respect. Recognizing the time, skill, and judgment poured into care work, we stop treating it as invisible. We also practice fair distribution of chores. Those with strength lift more, those with free hours take the next shift. The nimble-handed cook while the sturdy-armed carry. Fairness lives not in slogans, but in schedules. Finally, the goal is wholeness, not a new imbalance. We need a picture with both thrones and hearths, both inscriptions and masks, both conquest and stewardship. In a complete picture, our children learn to honor both front stage figures and those backstage, understanding that civilization grows not only from dramatic breakthroughs but also from small, steady philosophies that keep daily life moving smoothly. The next time you enter an old house, pause. Hear the simmering pot, the scent of cooked grain, the soft steps through a kitchen door, the call to a child. Then look around. Objects are telling stories, spaces are telling stories, and at the center are people whom history once described only in a few lines. When we learn to listen, history learns to answer more fully, more warmly, and more fairly. Top of form. Bottom of form. To understand Frida Kahlo, imagine a quiet room where Mexican light pours through a blue-painted window frame, laying a warm gold across a wooden bed, an easel, and bright jars of pigment. In that room, a woman with unmistakable brows looks into a mirror set in front of her. She is not simply checking her reflection. She is in conversation with it. Each brushstroke is not decoration but an act of naming emotions that are hard to put into words: fatigue, pride, loneliness, courage, hope. Where many people tell stories with paragraphs, Frida writes with color and symbols, crafting a visual language of her own. From childhood, Frida knew what it meant to be different. Health challenges slowed her down, inviting her to observe the way leaves close and open, the way light changes on a wall, how the body responds to weather. Learning to look closely is the first lesson in learning to paint. As a young adult, another life-altering challenge arrived. Rather than let it define her, Frida turned toward the easel. She hung a mirror near her bed so she could paint in any position, making herself her own model, not because self-portraiture is easy, but because no one could be more honest about Frida than Frida. What gives Frida's images their force is not photo-like realism but emotional accuracy. In her work, the body is not only a body. It is a map of lived experience. Ribs, ribbons, leaves, deer, monkeys, butterflies. Hearts, arrows, these form an alphabet. Alone, each symbol carries meaning. Arranged in Frida's settings, they become a grammar, part Mexican folk art, part the dreamlike. Part medical illustration, part personal philosophy. Viewers may not know every detail of her biography. Yet they can feel the tension of pain and pride, vulnerability and resolve. Frida never treats herself as a victim in her own art. She reclaims space by painting her body, naming it, and adorning it with flowers, traditional textiles, and symbols of her homeland. She turns what others might call weakness into a signature of strength. The Tewana dresses, layered necklaces, high floral headpieces, and bold brows together create a public image both strong and tender, traditional and modern. People see not only a painter but a declaration: I am myself, with all my differences, and I will appear in this world in my own colors. In personal relationships, Frida is passionate yet principled. She knows how to negotiate boundaries, time for making art, space for privacy, mutual respect. When heartbreak appears as happens in many human lives, she does not dissolve into tragedy. She converts it into material for art. One canvas might say farewell, another might greet a new beginning, a third might be a promise to herself, I will keep living in color. Here, Frida teaches an important lesson: difficult events do not have to end a story. Sometimes they change the form of the story from everyday prose into the language of image. Frida's themes are not confined to personal diary pages. She places her own body within larger currents. Mexico's indigenous heritage and folk tradition, the social and political climate of a turbulent century, international art movements, and evolving conversations about gender and identity. A self-portrait can be read on many levels: cultural identity, folk motifs, vivid local color, symbols of land and harvest, gender identity, the body as a zone of personal sovereignty, and civic identity, the artist as a citizen with responsibilities. Her palette is bright without being shallow. It glows because it is framed by shadow. She does not deny darkness. She edges it with flowers. The hardest task for anyone facing hardship is not allowing it to define the whole self. Frida meets this challenge with daily rhythm. The day may be painful, but the day also holds a song. A fresh vase of flowers, a vibrant skirt, and a sketch that gains a few more lines. When she cannot travel, she turns the room into a universe, a mirror to shift the viewpoint, potted plants to bring in nature, a blue door to welcome light onto the floor. She keeps rearranging life so there is always room for painting. In this way, art becomes not just a profession but a method of survival. If we translate Frida's approach into a practical toolkit for today, it might look like this. Name it. Write, draw, or record any method that helps you identify the feeling. Create your symbols, choose a personal emblem for each feeling: a flower, a wave, a stone. Prepare a space, set aside a small corner where your chosen language can live. Keep a rhythm, a little every day, a stroke, a sentence, a melody, let time do the compounding. Follow these steps and you will discover what Frida found: pain can be material. But will is the architect. Material does not decide the building. Hands and a plan do. Frida leaves us not only paintings but a way to live, honest, brave, anchored in identity. Patient with oneself, and unwilling to let a day pass without adding one more color. So when you stand in front of a Frida canvas, ask less what happened, and more what did she choose. She chose to show up, to name, to create, and to live with everything she had. That is why her colors have not faded with time. She did not paint to decorate a wall. She painted to light the inner room of anyone willing to look. After telling Frida's story as a journey of turning hardship into art, we can ask, why does Frida still stay with us today? The answer reaches beyond her iconic look. It lives in the reach of her message: be true to your identity. Use creativity to speak with adversity. Let art become a bridge between self and society. First, Frida stands for identity. She does not dilute her Mexican heritage to be universally neutral. She does the opposite: amplifies it: traditional dress, folk motifs, local color, the symbols of nature and animal guardians. In doing so, she proves that the more honest you are about what is yours, the further your art travels. When viewers from around the world meet Frida, they do not only see Mexico. They recognize their own homes reflected in her courage to guard what she loves. Second, Frida stands for courage. It is not the absence of fear. It is naming the fear and choosing to move through it. She does not hide difficult days, and she does not display them for shock value. She transforms them: a flower in her hair, a radiant skirt, a piece of fruit placed by the window, a fresh canvas. Courage is not always a roar. Often it is a steady whisper: today, I will paint. Third, Frida makes creativity central to social dialogue. In a century of upheaval, she trusts that images can heal and open conversations. Her works ask us to consider the body. gender, identity, culture, and the right to live as oneself. These are not slogans. They are specific pictures of face looking directly at us. A heart described in paint, a flower set in the right place. That is why her images remain both deeply personal and widely relatable. Frida's legacy also includes a curriculum for emotional literacy. Museums, art classes, and creative circles often use her work to help people read feelings, express without harm, and respect difference. A common exercise: draw your own symbols for joy, fear, and calm. The goal is not to produce masterpieces. It is to help the participant begin a conversation with the self. In that role, Frida becomes a teacher, not asking anyone to imitate her, but encouraging everyone to find a voice. In public life, Frida models self-determination. She negotiates room for her practice, scales social activity up or down to protect health, returns to family when needed. Then steps back into public when she has energy. This is a sustainable strategy. Living long with one's calling by setting an appropriate pace. In an age of rushing, her lesson remains timely: practice restraint so you do not burn out. Another reason Frida endures is that she crafted her public image as a total artwork. Not only the paintings, but also clothing choices, personal styling, and home arrangements make a coherent statement. Today we might call this the art of living, turning one's life into a meaningful context for creation. For Frida, that meant a cobalt blue house, a courtyard with cacti and volcanic stone, a bedroom hung with a mirror and anatomical models, and a worktable crowded with brushes and pigments. Anyone visiting even through photograph senses, this is where a language was invented. To bring Frida's legacy into daily life, try a 5-day practice. Day 1: name, write down 3 recent emotions and choose a color for each. Day 2: symbols. Draw or choose a personal emblem for each feeling: a leaf, a wave, a pebble. Day 3: layout, arrange a small corner with 3 objects: flower, fabric, photo as reminders of what you want to keep. Day 4: small ritual, spend 10 to 15 minutes in the evening to talk in your medium: sketch, write, hum a melody without judgment. Day 5: selective sharing, send a picture or paragraph to someone you trust. The goal is connection, not perfection. This won't turn anyone into Frida, but it brings each person closer to themselves, exactly what Frida practiced throughout her life. Finally, honoring Frida is not about putting her on a distant pedestal. It is about bringing art to the kitchen table, where anyone can pick up a pencil, a small paint set, or a camera and begin. Frida proves that ordinary things: a flower, a dress, a bed, a difficult day, can become extraordinary material when seen with a creative eye. So her legacy does not live only in a museum. It lives in every moment you name a feeling and do something gentle for yourself. Each time you stand before a mirror and see a face that changes from day to day, remember, you do not have to fix yourself to be accepted. You can accept yourself to create. And perhaps, in that instant, you will hear Frida's quiet, steady line: today, one more stroke. Here we are, at the end of tonight's journey. If you would like, gently close your eyes and let the images fade like small, quiet waves. Leave the day's noise outside the door. In front of you there is only a warm blanket, an easy breath, and a soft space that belongs to you. Breathe in slowly, hold for a calm beat, and breathe out lightly. With each breath, set down a little weight: plans, errands, unfinished stories. Morning will be there when you need it. Thank you for keeping me company. If this left you a touch more at ease, feel free to like and subscribe so more people can find a peaceful corner, and share this with someone who might enjoy a gentle wind down. Offer yourself a small wish before sleep: tonight, I deserve to rest. Then let a tiny smile settle. I wish you deep, steady sleep, kind dreams, and a bright, unhurried morning. When daylight returns, may you wake with light eyes, a warm heart, and just enough calm to carry you forward. Sleep well, and I will meet you again on the next quiet journey.